not something that's there in the curriculum and that my student have to do that thing.
Literally, you said that different people at different stages of their lives are like physically predisposed to having an easier time on an instrument.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. Like, that the education, especially the music education, and any other education, when combined with art or anything, it has to be tailored to fit the student, and not the student to fit the education. Like it's the public in the public schools and everywhere, and that's why I wanted to write this book. And I also felt like while I was studying that, I studied music education and I studied performance and played in an opera. Those are like many things were missing in the educators, and I think like in order to be a good educator, you have to like let the students know about Mozart, that not he was just a good composer or like performer, but he was bipolar. You have to know and what he did with that condition and how it helped him so that the student feels better. And when then you have a student who feels like depressed or something, he comes and he's like proud. He's proud. He says, yes, well, look what Mozart did. He had the same thing that I have.
And right? He also had like a superpower.
Yes, and then he goes and then he's like, going composing and making like a masterpiece. And that heals him. Or sometimes, as I mentioned, it heals you. Or it can heal others, because what they did with the composers in one of the research papers I was doing, where you can read here, it's like that Mozart was bipolar. But what if the Mozart that composed the music actually helped someone else who was like depressed, or who was like melancholic, or who had like anxiety? So each music from these composers, these artists can affect and heal other composers. So they can heal between themselves with the music. So why then we don't do the research and study more the composition and the notes that are like drug-free and that they can help?
Well, that's the key.
That's like, yes, and they can help, right? Instead of just like, going and doing this magnetic resonance and this research, like on people's brains and everything, where we have here the music that has to be researched. And you can see one of the pictures where I have, and when I do with the students and they use the colors, you can see the colors of the repetition, and you can, based on the colors and repetition, you can diagnose. So that's another tool that has to be researched that I'm talking about in the book.
Yeah, you literally, what I loved in the book was when you were talking about composition as like a prescription, like songwriting as a solution. And I've never seen it written out like that. That's like that is like my.
Well, that's why I'm talking, and there's like an audio with the research I did when I'm playing on the piano and I'm showing how, like, let's say you play a chord, right? So how can you try to imitate someone who is anxious? What would you play?
Like that same chord?
Yes. Yeah, right? So now, this is an anxious chord, right? So now what would you do to help this chord, like, to bring it down and make him feel better? Yeah, so you see it's different. So we have to learn, like, these things and apply them, and that's, like, what it's, like, what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, it's more of a science than people know.
Yes.
We were talking earlier too about how I studied music therapy in college, and when I first started, it was like just kind of starting to become recognized like by insurances as something that they would like cover music therapy as like treatment for like for memory and for like rehabilitation after accidents and things like that, injuries, and obviously developmental and then psych stuff. I studied with I did practicums with kids, like with developmental stuff, and then gerontological, which is my favorite, which I see a lot of parallels in this book too, about like the ways that you use music for like an older population versus a younger population. But then my last practicum was the psychiatric practicum, where we were working with people from 18 to 99, was my oldest patient, with all kinds of different, mood disorders and personality stuff. And I was not ready to like do healing there because I was starting to learn about all these things. I was going through practically in opera school, you know, like
but
feeling
in
suffocated.
in music school, it's like we are artists and we hurt our fingers or thumbs from playing, you know, or if you're ballet, like your fingers and everything. And still we have to keep the public image.
Yeah.
Still we have to pretend like, oh,
especially classical music.
Yeah, classical music, like everything is fine, it's perfect, it's the concert, but what is going on in your brain, what is going on while you're like practicing, you know, and what is going on with the teacher. Sometimes like you can have a very good teacher, sometimes you can have a very bad teacher.
Oh my God. I had a teacher, I didn't care. I'm clearly, I have a low register, right? I've always had a low speaking voice, but in college, my vocal coach told me that I was not a mezzo, I was just a lazy soprano. I was like, I'm alto. I'm almost a tenor.
And that's the thing, sometimes like the teachers, what's wrong, what they do is like they push all the students to play the same repertoire. If she played Beethoven,
generational
the students have to play that, and they have to use their bowings, they have to use their compositions, and that's where they're wrong. You know, because I might not feel like I want to play romantic piece. I might feel like I want to play, you know, classical piece, or I might want to play like hip hop or something else.
Yeah.
And then you have to let the student do that because you know they know themselves the best.
And you have to
adapt.
You have to like that makes me think of like I'm a performer in the city, you know, and like there've definitely been times I've gotten burned out performing, and I have to go see, like there'll be a period of time where I'm not going to see music, and I can really feel it once I go to the first show after a while. It's like literally like I can feel my life force like increasing just from seeing, you know, it's like they're grinding the same way that I am, and look at them do it. I'm like I can't, because it's a choice every day to keep doing.
Yeah, and it's important, you know, like I remember like when I started the violin at 6 and I had a teacher and she was like old, but she was like so like obsessed like with me playing and practicing all the time. Like basically she would come to my home, take me and let me to go and watch opera, and she would say, I want you to listen to the singer, and then I want you to, when you hear this, how the singer is like, you know, like singing, I want you to use that on the violin to play vibrato. So this is how this should sound.
Emulate.
She would even take and even cut my nails so that they are like very like straight for the violin. And even she would like
the nails for
the nails because I had
or just because of how it shows when you
just because she felt like that they have to be like finger cuts, so that they don't you know, so that you can play better and the sound and everything. You know, to get touch the strings. You know, so at one point that was good, you know, she wanted like me to practice, you know, to go on competitions and everything, but at one point I felt like, I said like, I have to like change the teacher or I'm like just not continuing with music, you know, so it
she's gonna break my spirit.
Yes, and sometimes what happens is like, not everyone can be a teacher, and the mistake is that many of the soloists who perform, they're becoming teachers. And they cannot be good teachers.
Yes, it's just
then
it's just like bad parenting. It's the same thing. You're like, I just want to teach because I feel that the way that I do it is the best way, and it's not coming from an open-minded space. Everybody's going to grow in different ways, and maybe grow up to be teachers of their own, and keep diversifying the way that we.
That's what I'm like, you know, what I'm saying, like what I'm trying to say. And I don't know if like if we talk about like the inclusion and diversity in the chapter. The 5th chapter where I'm talking about how we should like have this
customize people's
and to have critical thinking. Like, you know, I'm talking about like how will you, the teacher in your class, adapt, you know, to the class, like what is like beautiful in art, teaching and finding freedom. So in the real world of pedagogy positions as educators, we must continually discover and rediscover openings ourselves. Sometimes what we see as universal and suitable can shock us because of the different viewpoints surrounding us, and this may pressure us to shift. And that's when we shift, we go like change our profession. We shift, you become from music educator, music therapist, or you become from music performer, become music educator. sound
admin, music
yeah,
admin,
music
so that you can start making your choice about where the budget goes.
and become like a music business,
Yeah.
go
Advertise. Oh my god! I just tell somebody I want to get into jingles, man.
Yeah.
That's my next venture.
Yeah,
That's
so
how you go corporate.
that's why I was like, I have like this chapter where like I want them to, explore that critical thinking and then see what were the obstacles with the philosophy of the music education, like what it means, to be critical of music, diversity,
And even searching for problems helps you remember what your resources are and what tools are already around. Like I was thinking about like in some of the case studies we were talking about, like the materials needed to do this with this student. Like one of them was like, oh, just a songbook and a metronome.
Yeah.
Literally just something for them to look at and listen to while they're practicing. What was the other one? Mirrors. Mirrors around. They can see, especially in singing. That's so important to do because you don't know what you're doing, and like then you start singing. You're like, why am I making that face? Maybe that's why it hurts when I do that. You may adjust, and then it's not adjusting the way that someone tells you to, but you can follow your body and yeah.
Yeah, and I was also talking in the chapter 3, I don't know if we catch up on that, about like how, like through music we can diagnose also autism. Like I'm talking there about like the mainstream students and how actually I had like 2 students and then I felt one of the students that was like the mainstream, he struggled more and had more difficulties than the other student, who was like gifted and was quite exceptional. And so what I'm talking here is that like,
and the assessment I'm sure is also customized, you read, what's happening in front of you.
Yeah, I was like comparing the 2 students and then their problems of using the same creative methods and the responsiveness in my research, and it resulted that the autism student was able to do multitask and more repertoire and could be motivated very quickly, while the mainstream student was easily discouraged and anxious when trying something new to learn. And the student who was like gifted, he never complained. Because the mainstream student used excuses like lack of free time to practice and worse. So from my point of view, looking at the 2 students, I think that through more assessment, research, observation, and comparison, we can conclude that it is possible to diagnose those who are differently gifted and with other disorders.
Yeah, it's when it comes from like a real place and where they have like a predisposed to understand music, they get excited to start learning.
And in the future, maybe physicians can use music and instruments to track the human brain instead of using scans, like magnetic resonance, which is unsafe for the human skin and can lead to cancer. If we can be more sustainable and care for the planet, why not care to be healthier in medical examinations? It is our body and brain after all.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I really aligns with the way that I see. Yeah.